Smash Bros. A fan-favorite franchise for Nintendo that has had an installment on every single Nintendo console since the N64. For me, it started on the Wii. After finding a video about the Subspace Emissary, I found it really compelling and wanted to play it on the Wii. So, a 12 or so year old me asked my mom if we can get the game. And it was great, it was so much fun. With the next Nintendo console on the horizon, many assume that a Smash Bros. Game will come to it. And I am one of those who assume this. So you might think I would make a video about what I expect from a new Smash Bros. Game. Maybe making a roster video where I cut the roster down, like many others have. But I'd rather do something different. You see, recently, I've come across a YouTuber by the name of RetroMesh. RetroMesh is a 3D modeler who has recently been making models for a series he calls Smash Bros. DS. In these videos, he makes models for a hypothetical Smash Bros. Game on the DS. No, not the 3DS, the original DS. The one that came alongside the Wii. He even takes into account the actual limits that the console had, limiting the polygon count to like 600 max, including all of the objects that a character would have, like Kirby's hammer. You should go follow him. Makes really good stuff. Anyways, this brings me to the reason I've made this video. I thought this idea was so interesting that I wanted to cook something up for a hypothetical Smash game that would release around the time Brawl came out on the Wii. What unique modes would it have? What stages? How would it differ from the console version? And so, today, I challenged myself to see how a possible DS version of Smash Bros. Could have looked like. And so, without any further distractions,
go for it, man!
To start out with, I think we should talk about what differs from the Wii version. Unlike Smash for Wii U and 3DS, these games will not be just basically ports, but rather two entirely different games, with the cross-compatibility being basically zero. While some games allowed for DS connectivity, such as Pokemon Battle Revolution, they pale in comparison to the connectivity that Smash 4 had. So the likelihood would be that they had no crossplay between the two, the DS and the Wii version, and instead only have small collectibles that would be exclusive if you connected the two, such as stickers or trophies. Speaking of trophies, since this game is on the DS, I see them likely foregoing the trophies. Likely only having trophies, air quotes, for characters that are playable in the game, so that we have a model view of some sort. But to continue on to more interesting things, what modes would this game have? The easiest one to figure out would obviously be some sort of variation of Classic Mode, a staple of the franchise that has been in every single game since the N64. I could see each fight consisting of you fighting a random variation of characters with constants such as a minigame like Break the Targets, or the second to last character being a giant character like how Donkey Kong was in the N64 game, with the final fight being a boss character. Obviously, we'd have the main bosses of Smash Bros, Master Hand and Crazy Hand, be there, giving Crazy Hand a slightly different color for Master Hand to make it easier to differentiate between the two on the small DS screen. Though it could be interesting if we have more variations of bosses. We don't have to get too insane, but we can maybe add one or two more depending on how good you do in the Classic Mode. An obvious choice is Giga Bowser to fight like you did in Melee, or maybe one could be a legendary Pokemon such as Giratina as an advertisement for Pokemon Platinum, which would release later in the same year as Smash Brawl. Though, I believe if there would be more bosses, that the likelihood of them showing up in Classic Mode is pretty low, and them showing up in a different mode would be higher. That mode being...
Let's party!
With Smash Bros. Brawl having the Subspace Emissary, we need a corresponding mode to replace it, since the large map of the Subspace Emissary and the hundreds of rooms it has would not fit on a handheld. We could have a short adventure with a couple of boss fights that leads into a final boss. This mode could take inspiration from other works that Masahiro Sakurai has worked on, like Kirby, specifically the Great Cave Offensive. No, not the terrible stage that they brought in Smash 4, but rather the mode in Kirby Superstar and Superstar Ultra. A semi-large area made up of 4 to 6 separate areas, each ending in a boss. I could see each area being based on a single franchise or combining 2 franchises to really cram in all we can into this mode. For instance, the first area could be Mario and Donkey Kong. The level could look like DK Jungle with mushrooms sprouting out everywhere. Mario blocks could be placed about with you being able to smash them, and both Mario and Donkey Kong enemies could be walking around. The boss could simply just be Giga Bowser, or It could be some sort of combination between a Mario enemy and a Donkey Kong enemy, Donkey Kong Country specifically. And the rest of these areas could work the same. Maybe one could instead be more minigame-esque, where you use the bottom touchscreen of the DS as the cursor of some sort. Maybe it'd be like an F-Zero Star Fox area, where you aim with the cursor and shoot at the enemies on the bottom screen. There's a lot they could do with this mode, and while hardware limitations may have stopped them from doing such a thing, I still think it interesting to imagine what could have been. But speaking of hardware limitations, this is where some cutting has to start happening. Items. Things that make Smash not just a competitive game, but a game you can play with your friends and family. Most of them would likely get cut. Basic items like food could stay because they're basically just textures or images, but things like Pokeballs would need to get cut since they add models that would make it harder to run the DS. And assist trophies would be exclusive to the Wii version. Both of these would cut a huge portion of the possible representation in the game. I also see Final Smashes not being there either, though it would be interesting if they would try to do a simpler version of the Final Smashes for each character. There are also stages. Any stages with super complex scenes or gimmicks, like moving stages, would either need to be simplified to the Mushroom Kingdom or just removed. And any remaining ones would likely have the N64 treatment rather than the GameCube treatment. Very simple, with extraneous details being more flat than actual model. So for a simple list, in this game, I would imagine things like Battlefield, Final Destination, Brinstar, Green, Saffron City, without any of the spawning Pokemon, a simplified version of Hyrule Castle, a simplified version of the Mushroomy Kingdom, the side-scrolling one, a Pokemon Stadium without any of the extra transforming bits on it, and Green Hill to all be there. And of course, some of the Brawl stages that are new could be there too, such as Pictochat, since Pictochat is a DS thing, and this is a DS game. Also, a more slimmed down version of the WarioWare stage could easily make it in too. Maybe 1 or 2 minigames rather than having the whole barrage that they had on the Wii version. And since this is a new game, we would need new hypothetical exclusive stages as well. Maybe something like Sky Pillar from Pokemon. You know, the area where Rayquaza was chilling in the 3rd generation games. Or we could also have Tall Mountain from the handheld Zelda game. A lot of handheld specific areas would be really nice since this is a handheld game too. Even a couple of new franchises could be represented in stages. But I'll save that for later. And since this is a fighting game, the game is only as good as the roster, and for this game specifically, we're gonna have to make some tough choices. So let's do this. Some of the obvious ones to stay would be characters like Mario, Luigi, Yoshi, Pikachu, Kirby, Link, Samus, Donkey Kong, and Fox. Those are all some of the basic characters and really iconic to the Nintendo brand, especially at the time. But for some, we should take more inspiration for their handheld ventures. For instance, Mario and Luigi had the Mario and Luigi series recently in the Partner in Time game, so we could replace some of their old moves with new ones. A fan favorite idea is having Mario and Luigi replace their forward smash with hammers, and these hammers will take their appearance from the Mario and Luigi games. Luigi could even use his electrical powers that he had in the Superstar Saga, making him more different from his Wii counterpart. And much like Mario's Wii counterpart, this version would have a different down special, but it would not be Flood, since I think that would be hard for the Nintendo DS to replicate. So what could it possibly be? Well, I'm gonna use Retromesh as more inspiration, because in his video, he said that he would make Mario's down special in the DS version to be the ground pound, a commonly used move in the 3D games. Once you use the move, you would do a flip and fall to the ground. On the ground itself, it'll be pretty good, making a small shockwave, but in the air, it will rush you straight down to the ground, having a huge spike hitbox at the bottom. Though, if you go off stage, you might as well say, "So long, Bowser!" And that's how I would do most of the changes for characters. I'm not gonna go in too in depth, but like characters like Link, he would be based on maybe some Wind Waker style, more cartoony. But proportionally, they have the proportions of how he did in the artwork for the Oracle of Ages games, and his moveset would mostly stay the same. And then there's Samus. Her latest At that time, mainline entry was on the Game Boy Advance, a handheld, so we could take inspiration from that, making her design being based on the fusion suit instead of the Varius suit, and her missiles being freeze missiles, cutting out the two variations and just having one, making it simpler for the game. The rest of the roster will have the same ideology for their character designs also. Though now that I put that out there, I obviously have to say that not everyone's coming back. With the hardware limitations of the DS, any character transformations being a part of their moveset would either be changed or cut. So characters like Ice Climbers with their multiple characters moving at the same time would likely be cut, since they were cut from the 3DS version. And also Sheik would be cut for the transformation, leaving Zelda with a new move instead of a transformation. We could go the Smash 4 route, but since that has an entire extra model, I likely see that the DS will not be able to handle that and or it'll hamper performance. So instead we can use an item from Zelda, maybe the Ice Rod of some sort, where it shoots to some sort of effect and once it hits someone, it can freeze them. Some of the clone characters could stay, but not all of them. Characters like Dr. Mario, Pichu, Young Link, and sadly Roy would likely be out. And with the knowledge that Jigglypuff was planned to be cut from Brawl, I can see her missing out on this one. That leaves us with the rest of the Melee cast. Mario, Luigi, Bowser, Peach, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, Captain Falcon, Ganondorf, Falco, Fox, Ness, Samus, Link, Zelda, Kirby, Pikachu, Mr. Game & Watch, and Marth. Oh wait, yeah, and Mewtwo will be cut. It's a pretty decent roster already, and it makes sense, but you don't want to have less than the previous game in this one, because then why even buy it? It makes no sense. But then, hardware limitations, we're not going to be able to get as many characters as we did in Brawl. If we include the transformations as separate characters, which I do, Brawl had about 39 characters in total, but a lot of those were already cut. Some of the Brawl newcomers that could work for the DS could be Wario, but without his motorcycle skin, Diddy Kong, Pit, Ike, and Meta Knight. But there are many others that had smaller components to their kit that would likely miss out on this adventure, like Olimar and his Pikmin, and King Dedede because of his Waddle Dee and Gordo, the Spike Ball. But the same logic of Young Link being cut, Toon Link, Lucas, and Wolf would likely be exclusive to the Wii version. And obviously, since he's a transformation character, Pokemon Trainer and all three of his Pokemon would be cut. Zero to Samus, even though she is only a Final Smash Edition transformation, would likely also be cut, especially since in this version I see Fusion Samus being there instead, and Fusion Samus going to Zero Suit Samus would not make much sense at all. Characters I could see being in this version could be characters like Rob, because he has a simple shape and design, being mostly cubes, and the fact that Mario Kart DS also had him in there, making his shot in Smash be a little bit better. Lucario, since he is cross-promotion for Gen 4, would be in here, and that's why Mewtwo was cut. This gives us 25 characters so far. 27 if we include the guest stars, Snake and Sonic. And with the number 39 in mind for the Wii version, I could see us getting 5 more characters made exclusively for this game, giving us about 32. Likely all these characters would be Nintendo characters, since I doubt they would give more guest stars to the handheld version than the console version. But who would these characters be? Well, I would hazard a guess that all or a majority of these characters would be characters from handheld games to fit the theme for this game, since it's on the DS. So let's get started with since this is a Nintendo handheld console, a Pokemon is a given, and since we already took out Pokemon Trainer, Jigglypuff, and Mewtwo, we should probably add some more characters back. And since we already have Lucario as a Gen 4 rep, I could easily see us get a Gen 3 rep. In my opinion, the best one for this position would be Sceptile. Sceptile, even back then, was a fan favorite, with its presence in the anime likely giving it a boost compared to others in the franchise. They could center its gameplay around Leech Seed and throwing around the area. Once the opponent steps on the area the Leech Seed was active on, they will get grabbed, letting Sceptile get a free hit in if they don't mash quick enough. The next fighter is from a series that was exclusive for Nintendo handhelds for the longest time. This character being Sammy. From the Advance Wars series, originally on the Game Boy Advance, this would add another handheld character, but also give cross-promotion to another Advance Wars game, Days of Ruin. Sammy could be just herself, or possibility of her being swappable between a ground unit and a tank unit for specials. And to continue on of the Game Boy Advance series, I could also propose Isaac to be the next fighter for this game, from a more traditional Final Fantasy styled RPG called Golden Sun. For those who did not know, Isaac appears as an assist trophy in Brawl, and with assist trophies being cut in this hypothetical Smash game, I would find it fair to just add him into the roster. He could can use any number of his side energy spells, but his most well-known one, Move, original name I know, would need to appear in his arsenal, the giant hand move he has in his assist trophy. Now, those two are pretty safe in terms of first-party Nintendo characters, and both have their camps to this day to appear as fighters in the next game. But this next one is a little more far out there. So, say welcome to Kyle Hyde, a character from a DS visual novel inspired game called Hotel Dusk Room 215. A salesman and ex-detective, he happens upon a strange case in a hotel he's staying at. And while he's not quite the fighter in his game, since it is a visual novel game, I could see him taking inspiration or filling a similar role as Phoenix Wright does in the Marvel vs. Capcom series, but being a lot more put together. Okay, we're at the last one. And this one isn't really a handheld franchise, but the last game to come out from this franchise came out on the DS right before Brawl came out. The last fighter, in my opinion, would be Ray from Custom Robo, a franchise about what else? Customizing your mini robots and fighting each other. Like Isaac, Ray was an assist trophy in Brawl, and just like Isaac, I put him in the roster for the same reason. With a large arsenal of weapons at his disposal, Ray would obviously be a zoner, firing lasers and bombs at anyone that stands in his way. But to make reference to how small he is, Ray would be no taller than Kirby. And that's my idea. I think it's pretty good. If this actually came out, I would have loved it on the DS. Though, again, this is a hypothetical for a game that never came out, so I might just sound completely insane. But, hey. Thanks for watching. If you have any better ideas for a Smash game on a DS, please comment them down below. Until next time, goodbye.